Hi, I'm Dawn.
I'm Ashley.
And this is Mel.
Welcome to the Work It, You Are Worth It podcast.
We are here to discuss awareness, growth, and healthy relationships.
Are you ready?
Hey, everybody. Mel, Ashley, how are you guys?
Hi, I'm great. Hi, Ash. Hi, Dawn.
Hi, everyone. I am wonderful also. Dawn. Hi, Mel. How's everybody going today?
I'm going pretty good. I just came back from a weekend with my sister. She broke her ankle. And I have to say, that woman is a trooper. She got one of those little scooters, and you can rest your knee on it and scoot around. And she just getting around that house like no one's business. She's just really navigating herself around on this scooter. So I'm really happy to see that she's doing better. I left her house yesterday with a clean conscience that I'm leaving her in good hands with her husband. And yeah, she's doing really good.
Awesome. Glad to hear that.
Good.
I had a horse show for my youngest daughter this weekend, and my son was there, and she took fourth in the competition in the class that she participated in. So it was a really good weekend.
Yay.
That's
Good.
awesome.
Well,
Did,
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to ask if you did anything fun this weekend.
I put it all over TikTok. I put it out there on TikTok. My self-care this weekend was a girls' night. We went met up for dinner with two of my friends and got there at 6:30 and got in my car at 12:30. So typical
That
normal night. Love doing
that
that.
sounds like a fun evening.
Yeah, it was good food, amazing company. I love getting together with the two people that I got together with on. Right, we talk about just every topic under the sun. Like there's just nothing off the table, and that's always that's just that's always fun. That's always fun. So,
For sure.
anyways, yeah. Yeah, so that's what I did this weekend. So we have been talking about um, actions that we take to build a relationship with ourselves. Last week we spent, or last podcast that came out, or will be coming out based on tonight, we talked about intentional quality time with self and what that looked like. Tonight we're going to be talking about intentional communication with self, and then over the next few weeks we're going to be talking about learning to listen to ourselves, awareness of how I treat myself, and intentional compassion and forgiveness of self. So, this is kind of that first step into finding awareness, and right, got to start with yourself. So, yeah, so tonight's intentional communication with self and the hurdles around that. What does it look like to communicate with myself? Why, ways to do that, and the benefits we do that. So, intentional communication with self. What is intentional communication with self?
For
Well,
me, oh, go ahead, Mel.
no, you go ahead.
Sorry. For me, intentional communication with the self is all about how I talk to myself and how I think to myself and how I speak to myself.
I was going to say generally the same thing. I think it's just how you engage with yourself. Also, I think that communication with self too is about being aware of what's going on in your body, and also being aware of your thoughts. But I mean, I guess you cannot be aware and still communicate with yourself. I just don't know how good it would be.
But would that be more listening to myself?
What do you mean, like listening to your body? I mean, if you're,
Yeah. If
mm,
Yeah, I mean,
but
communicating the
just
way we talk about intentional communicating with ourselves for this podcast is, I mean, being aware of our thoughts and how we're thinking. Because at least for me, the thoughts that come into my head, I don't necessarily know that I'm listening to them versus I'm talking to myself about them. There is a combination of both, right? And next
oh
week
yeah.
we're really going to dive into listening to self. But definitely, right? So it the definition that we came up with while we were looking into what is intentional communication with the self, it refers to the deliberate and conscious exchange of information that people engage in to express their thoughts, feelings, and ideas to themselves with themselves. Um, I think that, I mean, that really covers it, right? Like
Hmm.
it's really all about what I say to myself, how I think to myself, and how I talk to myself. So what
Um,
are the things that have gotten in the way of how we communicate with ourselves? Like I know for me, for a really long time, I just wasn't aware that there was a secondary relationship with like myself. Like I
yeah.
wasn't aware of my own thoughts, of my own feelings, my own ideas. I just wasn't aware of it. So that was a huge thing for me to overcome.
I feel like one of the biggest hurdles for myself too was um, what I learned in my childhood about communication with myself. I know, like during my formative years, it wasn't really tolerated to express my thoughts or my emotions about anything that was unhealthy in the home. So I think that eventually I just kind of suppressed myself because I didn't really have a voice anyways when I was a kid. It wasn't heard or it wasn't acknowledged because there was just so much stuff going on in the home that I don't think I was taught how to listen to myself.
Yeah, that was a huge one for me. That was definitely a big one for me, Mel, that we couldn't speak my thoughts. I couldn't speak my feelings. I couldn't say what I needed to say.
hmm Um, And I remember being told, it's funny though, I remember being told to think before I speak. And I never understood that as a kid. Like, what does that mean? Because no one really ever showed me or taught me. All I just would, I get in trouble for something I'd say, and they say, "Why don't you think before you speak?" And I'd be like, "I don't even know what that means." I mean, I was just a kid, so.
Learning to communicate with myself, right? And Mel, I do agree, right? Childhood did not, there was no one in my childhood growing up taught me what it meant to communicate with myself. And I also know what was when I did try to communicate with even with others, right? And I know we're talking about with self, I was told, right, children meant to be seen, not heard, right? I couldn't have those like I couldn't have feelings because they just weren't allowed. So then what that did was that made me small, right? I was already a child and small, and it just made me smaller. And so then I carried that with me into adulthood and kept that smallness and didn't even realize that I could have healthy communication with myself because I do know, right? I did have unhealthy communication with myself, right? That's really what I learned as a child, and I carried that with me um, until I realized that the way I talked to myself actually shaped the way I thought about myself.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, for me, it was hugely about when I shared my thoughts or my feelings or my opinions. I, I then felt small due to the reactions, right? Other people reacted like, oh,
Yeah.
you're just overly sensitive, or you don't understand, or you don't know what we're talking. So I would then be made to feel small and be made to think like I a lot of times don't you think before you speak, and same things you guys were saying, right? So I wasn't allowed to communicate as a child to the people who were supposed to be safe for me. So
Right.
then when it came time for me to communicate to the one person who's supposed to be safe for me, myself, I didn't know how to do that in a safe way or in a positive way. And so I ended up doing it in a negative way, which was the only way that I knew how. Right. I would
hmm
Right.
definitely talk to myself like my parents spoke to me as a child.
Yeah, I think
Hmm.
too, like my mental state, um, growing up and plus as an adult and stress and deregulation and all that stuff. I know that if I was sitting in like my victim chair, or I'm in like a cycle of shame and blame, or I'm just in a really bad headspace, like I'm just trying to, escape myself with alcohol, weed, screen time, that is also a hurdle for me. Just my mental state, and if I'm trying to disassociate, that can also be a hurdle of how I communicate with myself. I'll just disassociate from myself.
Anxiety, stress can be a
Hmm.
hurdle,
Yeah.
right? That can get in the way. Um, right? I can let a lot of things get in. I can let other people get in the way. I can let my children get in the way if I don't have a significant other, but I could if I when I have, I could let them get in the way. And right, it's I really want to point out it wasn't that they got in the way, right? I let them get in the way. Right, it
I,
was all about me. And go ahead.
I put them in front of me.
Yes.
I made them more important than standing up for myself, than using my, or even than speaking to myself, right? Like I fill my time so full of everyone else that I didn't have room to think about how did I speak to myself, or to evaluate how I spoke to myself, or to even have the space internally, because I had so many other people that I was worried about, that I didn't even have the space internally to even be able to examine how I was speaking to myself.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I know that my codependency patterns affected my self-communication a lot. Like, I would believe another person over my own truth. And
I used to do that all the time.
yeah,
I would seek out other people's opinions
opinions.
and thoughts because, right, I didn't trust myself. Right. And
Hmm.
it's because I didn't understand that I could have a conversation with myself and be able to work through things within me and with my higher power because I, right, I just didn't know. I mean, for me, that's the biggest hurdle. It's like, I just didn't know. I didn't know there was a different way to do anything.
That's true. It was just absolutely, for myself too, it was just absolute ignorance. Had no idea that there were other options on how I spoke to myself.
But I don't want to use the word ignorance because that's not a really nice word.
I don't think
Ignorance?
ignorance is a mean word. To
It's
be
not a mean
ignorant,
word,
to be
but you didn't.
ignorant just means I don't know what I don't know.
I don't know. I didn't know.
Um,
To be
yeah,
ignorant, I'm just completely unaware that I don't know. And that's exactly what I was. Right. When I think about the word ignorant, and that's why, because I was actually getting ready to say the exact same thing, right? I think back to it, and that's what it was. I was ignorant of how I was speaking to myself, and how the way I spoke to myself made myself feel. I just didn't know. I didn't think about it. I didn't pay any attention to it. I simply had absolutely zero knowledge, and I didn't know that I didn't know.
Yeah. And it's funny. I went to therapy. I've been in therapy. I'm 53 now, and I've been in therapy since I was 24. And not one therapist taught me how to talk to myself. Isn't that strange? I had to teach myself.
And, for me, it wasn't just in the negative times. It wasn't just negative mindset or bad times. It would be like when I wasn't thinking about anything at all. I'd be just be walking around and I'd bump into something, and I'm not in a bad mood, and I'm not angry, or I'm not in a good mood. I'm just walking, and I'm calling myself stupid for bumping into something.
Yeah.
Or even being in a good mood and laughing at somebody making a joke, or make myself make a joke, and then I call myself an idiot for the joke I made. You know what I mean? Like I just never even considered how I spoke to myself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think it's about more than just, do we talk nice to ourselves or do we talk mean to ourselves? Because I can talk myself into and out of thoughts and cycles and circles also. And I never paid attention to that before. Right.
Well, I used to really believe my stories. I could tell myself a really good story and I believe it.
and then echo it back to yourself so it becomes a
Real.
mountain made out of a small little molehill.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I think, we talk about intentional, right? We're talking about intentional communication. And I think the thing for me, where the difference is with before and current is before it wasn't intentional, right? When I had a conversation with myself, it was usually to beat myself up. It usually was to tell myself I didn't do something right. It was right. It just would tend to be very negative, um, and unrealistic.
I would a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times spin a worry story.
Yes.
Right? I
Yes.
would take this story about how something bad is going to happen to my child. And by the
Mhm.
time I had driven 15 minutes down the road, now I was going to pull into my driveway and my house was going to be on fire and my kid was going to be standing in the front door naked, holding onto the dog by the collar and crying
Mhm.
because their cat was inside dead. Like, I would talk myself into this really negative, horrible conversation and just be totally unintentional and unaware.
Yeah,
Right.
my thoughts could spiral me. I could spiral, get myself into a spiral just by my thoughts.
Because I think when we're doing it unintentionally, right, we're not even considering what the thoughts that we're having. We're not considering the words that are coming out of our mouths. We're not considering anything. Where when we do it intentionally, right, it's the flip side of what is the stories, what are the facts, right? That is intentional. Let me consciously look at what I am thinking, what I am saying, and what in there is actually true. And what I found for myself is when I do that, I find like there's not much that's true. It's really sad, but
Either that or I find total confidence in what I'm saying.
right?
Right? I love to question myself.
Hmm.
And most of the people that I interact with, it kind of blows their mind because when somebody questions me, I actually like it. When I question myself, I actually like it because either I find out that I'm spinning this story and I'm making up this insane plot that never even happened, and right, it's the lawnmower guy in the library with the shield and really it's the cook in the kitchen with a knife. You know what I mean? Like, I just make up these insane stories in my head,
Yeah.
or I talk myself, either I make up, I don't examine it and I make up this insane story, or I examine it and I say, okay, that's a story, here's the facts. Or I say, okay, I said this and I am confident in this and I have questioned myself. So now I know I stand in this and now I'm going to stand up for it. Right. So it either by questioning myself, I either gain confidence and authenticity in what I'm saying, or I see the lie, I see the story, I see the denial, and I give myself a new perspective.
So really quick, I want to just let us recap, like what were the hurdles? What were some of the hurdles that we came up with, or we've talked about?
Awareness,
Not
in
having awareness, I guess.
right, lack of awareness,
Yeah.
lack of intention.
Um, if you're disassociating with substances or screen time,
Okay. What else?
um, I said my codependency patterns have stopped me from having a relationship
Mhm.
with myself or communication with myself or
Yeah.
good, healthy communication with myself. I definitely had a lot of unhealthy communication with myself.
Being
Yeah.
made to feel small as a
Yeah.
child.
Yeah, or childhood.
And it's just to sum all of those up, it's really just lack of knowledge. Just their lack of even of having the information that it's like intentional communication is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It very much lack of awareness, lack of
Hmm.
knowledge, lack of understanding.
Yeah. So we just mentioned a couple things with what it looks like to communicate with yourself. What do you guys do to do that?
How
So
do we, how do we communicate with ourselves? Is that
Yeah,
the question?
what does it look
Okay.
like when you if I'm gonna, excuse me, what does it look like to communicate with myself?
one of the things that I do every single morning, and it's fairly new, not new, newer in the last couple of months, um, it's an intentional conversation with myself. It is on my drive into work. I have a 25-minute drive into work every morning. And I ask myself how I'm, hey Ash, good morning. How are you feeling? And then I touch base with my physical being. I'm tired this morning. I'm happy. I'm excited. I'm whatever emotion I tend to feel in the moment. And then I ask myself, okay, Ash, who do you want to be today? And this is an out loud conversation. I ask myself these questions and I answer them out loud.
Mhm.
Sometimes I will change my mind and I will change my answers. It is a full two-way conversation out loud with myself. And I just have, how do you feel? Who do you want to be? And how are you going to handle any situations that occur? And when I say, how are you going to handle the situations? I'm not looking for a solution. I'm looking for characteristics, right? I want to be patient. I want to be loving. I want to be compassionate. Or maybe today my focus is on listening. I want to be a really good listener today and I don't want to interrupt. So I'm going to work really hard on that. Um, and it's just every single morning on my drive into work. Yeah, I don't usually do it on the weekends. That's kind of a relax. I lay in bed and set self care that way. But every morning I have that conversation with myself.
You said that you're when you're doing this, you're considering like the person you want to be today, but you're not telling yourself like it's not based on what other people are doing. Like you're not telling yourself the
No,
stories about this is going to happen at work and this is going to happen at
no,
work and right. It's okay.
it's about characteristics. Who do I want to be today? I want to be empathetic. I
Hmm.
want to be kind. I want to be compassionate. How do I want to handle problems at work? I want to be patient. I want to be loving. I want to be enthusiastic. How do I want to handle angry people? Well, I want to give them space and I want to be kind. It is not about anyone else or anything else. It's not about any specific conversation or situation. It's simply asking myself who I want to be and how do I want to handle it. And the reason I do that is because it creates intentional awareness within myself throughout the day. If I find myself being snappy, I'm able to say, Ash, you said you wanted to be patient this morning. Let's try to have some patience. I'm being a little snappy. And I'm able to have that conversation throughout the day with myself in my head because I have had that intentional conversation in the morning, which has helped me become aware.
I do it. So I do it actually in the at night. So, and one thing before I talk about that, but and you said it in yours, right? It's like something you said you just kind of started this the last couple of months, and I think that's the first one thing to note is right how I communicate. What does it when I what does it look like to communicate with myself means like it's evolved over time,
Oh, yeah, it
right?
changes big time.
Right. What I did 8 years ago isn't what I necessarily do today. It might be kind of the same, like one of the things again for me is at nighttime, but how I do it might have changed or what I evaluate because right, I've grown and things look different. So maybe the way I approach it might be a little bit different. I might ask myself different questions. But anyways, I do it at night before I get in the bed in bed. And one of the things is considering the day, look at back at the day, look at things that I wish I would have done maybe differently, right?
I have that one
Evaluate,
too.
yeah, evaluating myself, right? This isn't about I wish this person would have done this. It is about I wish I would have done this. Or I wish I would not, and I also don't do the I wish I would have said that. I wish I would have said this. right? It's just looking at it in this situation, whatever it is, maybe it's an interaction at work, and I wish I would have had more patience using using that example, right? Because when I look at it, then the next day with whoever that interaction was with, let's say it's my boss, that's going to pop in my head the next day because I've done the had that communication with myself and I've made myself very aware of it. And I love, like you said, talking out loud. I think that is imperative. I think you almost have to do it because that's how I remember it. It's like I make it real.
Yeah. And I love what you said because I do that too, Dawn, at night, every night. So in the morning, my conversation is more of a projection of what I want to be for the day. And then at night, it's more of a almost a report card, but it's not like a pass or a fail. It's very much like, I wish I had done this differently. I don't necessarily like the way I handled this. I really like with my daughter, with my youngest daughter. One of the things that we struggle in our communication with each other on is when her father sends her money
Mhm.
and what she does with the outrageous amounts of money that her father sends her, right? 14-year-old child, she gets $100. She goes on Sheen and wants to buy $100 worth of clothes that she doesn't need. And I'm over here like, I need to pay for horseback riding. You need a new pair of breeches. You need a new pair of boots. And I know I will get snappy with her in these conversations. So when we have these conversations, and I have gone back and interrogated myself, evaluated myself, given myself a grade, right? Yesterday we had this conversation, or today we had this conversation, and I was very snappy with her and I interrupted her 3 times. And really, I was frustrated because I didn't have money. I wasn't frustrated that she did. And I want to be supportive and I want to be proud and I want to help. Is there a better way I can handle this when it comes up again? And then I say to myself, okay, yes, if I want to be kind and loving and compassionate, then maybe when she comes to tell me she spent $100 on Sheen, I can say, wow, I love that shirt and those pants are really nice. And do you know that if you put $20 out of every $100 your father sends you into a savings account, then in a year you're going to have like $5,000 saved and you can get whatever you want? And I can present that to her
Yeah.
in a way she can hear when we have that conversation again. But if I don't have that conversation with myself in the evenings where I give myself a report card on what I did throughout the day, then I'm never going to improve because I'm just unaware.
Right. You said a word and I want to actually have you explain it a little bit more. I know what you mean, but I would love for you to explain it to the listeners. You said interrogate.
I did. And that's why I corrected it. And it's so when
But
I say interrogate,
yeah, yeah.
so it sounds rough, right? Like you think of a police station and you think of the detectives and a criminal, and the detectives are interrogating him. They're coming at him, they're asking. And when I say interrogate, I don't mean an attitude behind it. Like, I don't mean like we're in an interrogation, but I mean like interrogate as in get to the bottom of it, get
Yeah.
to the truth, ask myself the questions over and over again until I know that I am solid in what I believe in my heart.
Now, are you doing this with judgment or without judgment?
Never judgment. There's
Okay.
no right or wrong. There's no good or bad. There's not when I talk to myself, not when I talk to other people. That was a huge hurdle for me. I'm glad you brought that up, Mel. Um, one of the hurdles in how I communicated with myself was that I was very black and white. Either it was right or it was wrong. Plain and simple.
Yeah.
There was no in between. There was no different perspective. And when there is that much judgment, when there is that much, I don't know the word, judgment. That's what it is. It's judgment. When there is that much judgment, there's no authenticity there because you get defensive. I would get
Right.
defensive of myself against myself because I was judging myself. Oh, you're doing this wrong. It's not about right or wrong. It's about who do I want to be and am I doing what I want to do, or could I do it differently? Not better, not right,
Right.
different. What do I wish I had done different?
Mm-hmm.
Mel, I want to hear I do have I'm going to follow up with the question for you, Ashley, because it's something I really, really want to talk about and I want to spend some time on. But Mel, how do you do it? Like, what does it look like for you?
Um, like I like to write, so I letter write to myself. And I have I've been doing this since well, Ashley had me write one of my first, like I have written letters to myself before I met Ashley, but really intentional writing to myself, Ashley got me on that habit of writing to myself and not doing it from a place of judgment, um, kind of having an outside perspective and treating myself like a close friend now instead of like my own worst enemy. Um, so I do that. I also spend a lot of I like quiet time with myself where I just kind of am in stillness and I'm just kind of listening to the thoughts that do come up, but not listening, but observing the thoughts in my head that do come up. And, I'm just making a little mental note on what's going on with myself. I do pay attention to what's going on in my body. That's another thing how I communicate is I do pay attention what's going on in my body and just trying to think if there's anything else. One thing I do notice is how I'm treating people outside of myself. So if I'm getting snappy or I'm shrinking or I'm shutting down, then I just know that I've disconnected from myself somehow. And I just try to find that connection again. And that's, by what I said, meditation, writing, having just a outwardly conversation with myself, like just talking out loud. So it's basically what the two of you guys do.
Yeah. You said, right, you're talking about kind of some of those things that I can't remember exactly how you said it, but the more of the negative things, right? But one of the things about how I treat people, but one of the things I would also like to consider is, right, maybe I'm not mean to people, maybe I'm not impatient with people, maybe I'm not those things. Maybe I'm amazing to everybody else with me as the person being jeopardized. So
Mm-hmm.
having, right, being able to have that conversation where, right, I could have handled this situation differently with this person. And you know what? I could have handled this differently. And it's okay for me want to handle something differently in a situation because I felt like I gave too much of myself.
Yeah, it's important to be understanding of myself. And then we've talked, I thought you were going to say this, Don. We've talked a lot about the negative things, like noticing the things that I wish I had done differently. But I
Hmm.
also think it's really important in that same evening conversation to give myself credit for the things that I
There.
did really, really well.
Before we switch to there, I do want to ask you, want to bring up the one thing that you said, and
Yeah.
um, so you talked about the right. I have to interrogate. I'm putting quotes around that word right now that we've talked about what that kind of means, right? When I interrogate myself, I have to get back to the truth. I have to get back to the underlying
The
thoughts,
base.
opinion, right,
Yeah.
those that base, we call it the truths, whatever you want to call it, right? I think that's important to understand is at what point do you know you got to the core?
You'll know. So, right. And so for me, one of the very, very first things I had to do, and actually Dawn gave this to me, was the 5 whys. And it would start with 5. I asked myself why 5 times. And typically after the 5th time, I'm at the bottom.
Or you're annoyed with
Sometimes,
yourself.
yeah, sometimes it can go 8 or 10 or 12. A lot of times you will get annoyed. So what it looks like though is not it's very specific because a lot of times people will say, well, I'm angry. Why? Because I want to be. Why? And it's not that. It's I'm angry. Why am I angry?
Mhm.
I'm angry because Johnny interrupted me 5 times in one sentence. Why does Johnny interrupting me make me angry? Not why am I angry at Johnny? Again, I'm angry because he interrupted me. Well, but why does making me interrupting me making me angry? Because I don't feel like I'm heard when people are interrupting me. Well, why does not feeling heard make me angry? How many is that? I think that's number 5 right there, right? Why am I
Yeah, 4 or
angry?
5.
Why does that make me angry? Why does I'm angry because he ignored me. Why
Yep.
does that ignoring make me angry? Because I don't feel heard. Well, why does not feeling heard make me feel angry? Well, because when I was a kid, my parents never listened
Yep,
to me
there
and
it
they
is.
always interrupted me. And okay, well, why does it make you angry that you were interrupted as a child? Like, yes, you're angry, not angry at Johnny, you're angry because you were interrupted as a child, but even more than that, why does it make you angry? Well, because if you don't listen to the words that I'm saying, if my parents didn't listen to me, if you're not listening to me, then what I'm saying doesn't matter.
Yep.
Right. So and eventually you're going to say, well, why does that make you angry? Well, and you're going to come to, what do you mean? Why? It makes me angry because I'm not being listened to. Right. And you'll
Mhm.
say, okay, well, why? Well, because I'm not being, and you won't be able to go any further. And you'll know that's the root of it. That's the
Right.
base. That's the foundation. And then a lot of times, too, there's a core belief in there somewhere that says, if somebody doesn't allow me to finish my full sentence, then they aren't listening to me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Maybe that's not accurate. Maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe we need to examine that core belief and see if we agree with it still. I know in doing those 5 whys, eventually I came to an understanding that I thought if you didn't work more than 40 hours a week, then you weren't worth it. You weren't worthy. You weren't enough. And the only way I came to that understanding was by doing those 5 whys. And once I realized that my core belief was if you don't work 40 hours a week, you're not enough, I was able to look at that and say, well, but wait a minute, I don't actually believe that. That's not actually what I think. And I was able to change it. And I never
Don,
would have got there if I didn't do that root cause analysis.
Mhm.
Dawn had mentioned earlier that she also asks herself, is it true? I do that also. Um,
Yes.
I didn't always do that, but this is something that I do now. If I'm having an emotion or something about it, I try to figure out why I'm having the emotion, but I need to know, is it valid? Is it true?
One of the first
What are
ones
the
that comes up,
facts?
one of the first ones that comes up for me, Mel, is he never listens to me. Is it true? I'm angry because he never listens. But when I ask myself, is it true? It's not true that he never listens. Everyone listens sometimes. It's just true that in this moment, he's not listening.
Mhm.
That's another good point that you just mentioned. The words that we use. I know that I am speaking in absolutes when I use the terms like never, always, those kinds of words like he's always later, you never listen to me, or you're always talking over me, or you're always leaving this out, those words, but if when you're speaking them to yourself, like, oh, you're always stupid, or you're always messing up, and you're always doing this, those those words are so powerful. Like I'll always, never, there's more. I think there's like 4 of them that are kind of no words when you're talking to yourself.
I
I can't
used to tell
remember what they're.
myself, I used to always tell myself, you'll never get it right.
Yeah.
Every time I screwed up, every time I made a mistake, the first thing I would say is, you'll never get it right. Now I catch myself. Actually, I don't even say it anymore. It's taken years. But at first, I would say, "Oh, you'll never get it right." And then I'll go, "No, you're practicing. Practice makes perfect. The
Mhm.
more you practice, eventually you'll get it right." And I would correct myself. And now it's to the point where I don't even think that anymore. It's just not even there anymore. It, of course, took years, but because
Yeah.
of the awareness and the intentional communication with myself, a lot of that negative self-talk is completely gone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's really it's hard to get there because I don't know one person that doesn't have an inner critic riding passenger with them. It's, and that inner critic sometimes for myself has like the loudest voice.
Yes, it does for
Yeah.
sure.
No. No. So okay, so we've talked about what does it look like to communicate with yourself. I think, and Mel, I think words are key. I think that is probably the easiest place to start is just consciously picking different words
She
when
says
I speak.
easy. She says
Tuesday,
easy,
I
but she
know.
does not mean easy. Maybe
She's
it's the simplest place to start. Maybe it's the go-to place to start, but it is not
No,
easy.
it's definitely not. It is not. Anyways, so yeah, so there's that. Now we've talked a lot about hurdles, we talked about ways to do it or what to do, what does it look like, but how do you do it? Like what ways do you do this? We've talked about having a conversation with ourselves, an out loud conversation. What else is there?
We talked about meditating. We talked about
well,
journaling. We talked about out loud
But
conversations.
I
is
think it's
meditate
important. Oh, sorry, go
is
ahead.
meditation talk communication or is it listening?
Well, there's two different kinds of meditation, right? Like the way Mel was describing it, where she just sits quietly and hears the thoughts. Um, that in my mind is different than a listening meditation. So in my mind, there's two different kinds. One is a communicating where the thoughts are what I'm focused on, and that is talking to myself, right? The thoughts
Mhm.
are what I'm listening to and hearing, and I'm speaking to myself. Whereas a meditation where you're clearing the thoughts and you're sitting with yourself, that's a more of a listening
Yeah.
meditation.
I
Okay,
think
I just
that,
wanted to make sure we
oh,
clarified that.
sorry, I just didn't want to lose this because it's not bad. Um, one of the things that I was able to start listening to myself is I learned how to experience my emotions. I didn't do that before. I used to just have emotions and my thoughts could keep them going for days, months, years, and one of the things I learned is an emotion only kind of stays in your body for like 90 seconds, and it's your thoughts that can keep it going. So I learned how to just experience the emotion and let it leave my body. And that really kind of changed all those crazy thoughts that I used to have to keep the emotions going and going and going. It's kind of quieted the thoughts of just being aware of the emotion that I'm feeling, letting it sit in my body, and then watching it leave, like feeling it leave. So that is one of the ways that I improve communication with myself.
So I think one of the really important things to stay mindful of as we discuss talking to ourselves and having conversations with ourselves is the tone in which we present to ourselves. And Mel really mentioned it. Our inner critic, our own worst enemy, that is very loud and very right there through a lot of my life. And now in this awareness place, the way I communicate with myself, the way I speak to myself is a much kinder, much more compassionate, much more loving. I am my own best friend. And I take that quite literally. Would I treat my best friend this way? If the answer is no, then I need to not treat myself this way. Would I allow this treatment from my best friend? And if the answer is no, then I need to not do that
Yeah.
to myself.
But that doesn't mean I don't challenge myself, right? I challenge myself right? I play devil's advocate. I I right I in in I don't love this word, but we've defined it, very is not what, that interrogation of what we think. But like I do interrogate my thoughts. I interrogate my choice of words. I and I think that's something else that because I've learned to interrogate interrogate myself and the way I speak, I've become a much better communicator in every aspect of my life.
Yes,
Not just with
absolutely.
myself, but when I started doing it with myself, then it kind of went out. It just automatically goes outward.
Yes, it does. It really, when I'm kind, compassionate, and loving with myself, I am kind, compassionate, and loving with others. And I think that's kind of what Mel was leaning towards earlier, too, when she was saying, like, if I catch myself treating someone else badly, then I look in the mirror at how I'm treating myself. And usually I'm treating myself badly also.
So that's one of the benefits of communicating with ourselves. What are some of the other ones, right?
I
Um,
like taking a lighter action to it too. I like having a good sense of humor with myself.
Me
I
too.
do. I do. I can
I
laugh at myself. Yeah,
I have to laugh at myself.
yeah.
If I didn't laugh, I would be mad. Because, right,
Mhm.
sometimes we just do silly things. And if I don't have a good sense of humor with myself, then I can never understand myself doing something silly.
Right.
And I like getting curious with myself too. I've noticed that I've gotten more curious.
One of the major benefits that I've seen is that I'm more open minded, right? Because
Yeah.
I'm curious with myself, because I'm asking myself questions, because I'm interrogating and getting to the bottom of how I am speaking to myself and what I know and what I think, I am able to be way more confident in it and way more open minded and change my perception when someone brings me new relevant information. And then I'm also able to be another benefit is that I'm able to be more confident because I'm more open minded, because I have questioned myself, because I have looked at what I think and how I feel, and I know where I stand.
Yeah, like I feel like I have a more, you're right, like an openness, uh, more patience. And I actually feel connected to myself. And I've never felt that quite before like I do now.
I don't know how else to say it, which I know you two will understand, but I maybe you guys can help me explain it to the listeners better. When I communicate with myself, I open up space within myself to where I can take more in from other people, right? So if like when I'm not communicating with myself, when I'm not talking to myself, when I'm not having these intentional conversations with myself, and somebody else is having a bad day, I don't have as much patience for their agitation because I'm not aware of myself. But when I'm having these conversations with myself and somebody else comes at me snappy, I'm able to be more understanding and compassionate of their attitude because I'm more aware of myself.
Well, and you're probably not taking it personally, right? Like,
That's huge too.
yeah.
Mhm.
That's
I
a
think what I
huge benefit.
I think what I like what you said about that was right, all of that negative talk and all the negative I do with myself takes up so much space that there is no room for anything else. And so when I do have those intentional conversations with myself, right, it's because you think about all the stories we would tell ourselves. And I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I could do that 24/7, 365.
I was
Easy
meaner to
peasy,
myself than anyone else ever was to me.
right? But when I started having that conversation with myself, trying to understand myself better, it made more space in my life, to not feel that pressure and that weight and that, because that's really when I get short with other people. It's because the pressure is so much that I don't know what to do with it. It just becomes so overwhelming. And when I do talk with myself, I'm making room. I'm making room for other things.
I find too that negative self-talk can take up a lot of time. I don't know if you guys have ever found this with yourself, like if you're on a tangent with yourself and then someone just comes in and they interrupt those thoughts and I can get snappy with them because the lens I'm seeing myself through, I'm seeing the world through that lens at that moment. And the realization of that, like looking back at things that I've done in my life and how I've spoken to people and treated people, one of the major causes of why I could be uh, so negative was when, if I'm walking around with a dark cloud over my head, that's how I'm seeing my world. And it's really hard to come out of that. But when you do, like when I did, uh, I had to come at myself with a semblance of forgiveness. Like there had to be forgiveness for myself before I could even. That's when the self-passion came in, the self-compassion and passion. No, self-compassion and the gentleness and the kindness came in. But I had to forgive myself for a lot of things that I've done to myself first.
Something else talking out loud, communicating with myself is I find it to be very motivating. I find that it just improves my mental state overall. And I'm thinking about work. So one of the things with at work, right, I keep it in and I can get to that point where I'm not good enough, right? And Ashley, you talked about this kind of earlier about understanding the root things. For me, there are not many, right? They all go back to some very, very key things. Um, Feeling less than and shame, fear, right? It's those kinds of just low self-esteem type things. Um, and that's where it goes. So I don't know about you, and I kind of just went, whoop, but this came up, this popped in my head, so I'm gonna say it. I don't know about you guys. Um, do you notice that your communication with yourself, I know it's changed, but do you notice it takes less time?
Yes.
Yes. So when I first started this journey of awareness and growth and this journey I'm currently on, I used to, so it started out, I would have to write. And I mean, I would take an hour every single day just to self-reflect on how I handled the day. Every evening it would take an entire hour and I would go through each situation and write down because I had to build that awareness.
Mhm.
And now I've been on this growth road, on this journey, this path for 4+ years. And it is much less. It takes much less, right? So when I interrogate myself in the evening, it's like 15 to 25 minutes. You know what I mean? In the mornings, it's maybe a 5 to 10 minute conversation. I don't even know if I would go that far, maybe 5 minutes
Yeah.
every morning. It's it's not, it used to be hours in a day, and now it's just minutes in a day.
Yeah, yeah. Like it happens so fast. I mean, even just referring back to the five whys, the whys, right? I can do that in just such a split second, but it's because I've like, right, I didn't skip steps, right? In the beginning, right, I took the time, the hour a day, the 2 hours a day, the 3 times a day, right? I took that time. Now, what I find is I do it more often, but it's such a blink of an eye. Like it happens so fast because I don't need to get like
Let's even
I
go
don't need.
back. Go
Yeah, go
back.
ahead.
Sorry, Dawn. Go back to tying your shoe.
Yeah,
Right? When you first learned how to tie your shoe, I don't know about you guys, but I had this little saying, cross, tuck,
crisscross it. Yeah.
pull, loop, swoop, tuck,
What is that
pull.
name of?
And I used to have to go through it the whole step by step every time. Now I'm 41 years old. I've probably been tying my shoe for 38 years. I don't even think about it. It
Right,
takes me a half a second. But
right.
if I watch my 5-year-old tie their shoe, it takes a full 2 minutes.
Do you guys
Yep.
think it's because, like, for Dawn, because you've been doing this for so long and it's almost like you rewired yourself? That's why it's so
Yes.
much quicker.
Oh,
Yeah,
100%.
the more
Yeah.
you do it, the easier it gets and the faster you get at it. One
Yep.
one of the ways, one of the analogies or metaphors I like to use to describe this journey that we're on is basically your brain is made up of neural pathways. These are nerves that send signals to and from your brain, and the pathways are the paths that these signals take. When we are changing how we communicate with ourselves, when we are changing how we communicate with other people, when we are changing these core things, we are actually creating new neural pathways.
Mhm.
Just like if you are creating a new path through the woods to go
Hmm.
on down wherever you want to go. The first time you walk that path, there's all kinds of things sticking out. You got to duck under brush. Maybe you got to chop it down. Maybe you got to get an axe and cut something. But by the time you've walked that path every day, 4 or 5 times a day for 4 or 5 years, your path is clear. What took you an hour the first time is now a 5 minute walk because there's no overgrowth. It's just a clear, straight path.
Yep.
The path in your brain, your neural pathways, they're the same. It once it has a path, it follows that path straight away. But when you had right originally your path went left to right, now your path is going up and down, so you have to rebuild it. And it takes
Mhm.
time to do that.
Hmm. Now, that doesn't mean something doesn't happen and stuff doesn't grow back, but I think the big thing is it's not letting it get overgrown, right? It's like mowing your grass or something, right? You let it get really long, it's going to eat up your lawnmower. If you just maintain it, then it becomes this easy, quick thing. And I think that's really what it is. I mean, you know, when I came into the journey into recovery almost 8 years ago, it became I took a leave from work and it became my job. And I continued going to meetings and I met people and I met with them once a week on top of going to meetings once a week. And then when I struggled to get what I wanted in a meeting, right? I created Work It You Are Worth It meetings and the space and the website and all of that. And so you think about when I did that for the last 5 years, I have been doing Work It You Are Worth It every single day, all day long, whether it's adjusting the website, whether it's now to doing a TikTok or doing the podcast with Ashley or going to a meeting or making, right, having, thinking of ideas to come to grow it, right? All of that is still my growth and awareness because it's such at the forefront of my brain. And I think that's one of the reasons because I've had so many sponsees and I've done this so I keep just looking at it constantly to to grow that I think that's why it's gotten so easy because it's just I've invested the time in myself. That's what I did. I've just invested time in myself.
The more you do it, the easier it gets. It
Yep.
becomes second nature. That's one of the things that I was going to say, and I hadn't mentioned yet. Frankly, a lot of this is just habit and
Hmm.
breaking an old habit and creating a new habit.
Yeah.
I would tell myself all the time, any mistake, my instinct, you'll never get this right. Or Like you guys have all heard me say, I'd bump into something, I'd be like, God, stupid. I'd laugh at something. Somebody would make a joke, ha ha ha, you're so stupid. And I never even thought about it. It was just a habit. I had to break that habit and put a new habit in. You can't just stop one without filling it with something else. That's human nature.
Well, I think one of the biggest benefits of all of this too for myself and is my relationships have improved because I've learning how to speak to myself with kindness and compassion, and I have like a new tone with myself. I find that now I can express that with other people. And my head, my thoughts are not just filled of thoughts about negative thoughts about myself all the time or putting myself down. My brain, actually, I noticed something yesterday. I had a long drive. I drove for 4.5 hours yesterday. And what I noticed is I didn't have any thoughts in my head. I just listened to the music and I actually had no thoughts. Isn't that strange?
It's quiet, isn't it?
It is so quiet, but it
That's
was lovely.
it's not strange though. That's
There was
recovery. That's peace.
no rumination. I can't tell you how much I hate rumination. I don't know. Rumination is when you're like repeating things in your head and you can't get off a topic. It's just obsessive thinking. I hate that. I hate it so much. And I've been finding that happens less and less and less. And
Yes, because you
I
call yourself out when it's happening.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then I have like tools to help me. Oh, I'm doing this. Okay, I can do, I'm doing A, let's do B and it'll stop. Uh, like doing the work has the work that and what you and Dawn and at like Ashley and Dawn have taught me. I can't tell you how different it is to sit with myself now. How actually enjoyable it is, to tell you the truth.
There's one other thing I want to talk about really quickly, and then we'll wrap this up. But something we haven't talked about, the benefits of learning to communicate with myself, is reparenting myself. One of the things that early on when because I struggled with that relationship with my I call her my inner Dawn, my little Dawn. She's my little Dawn, that child in me. Um, she used to not be in me. She was over there somewhere. But I remember my therapist told me to grab a picture. Like, when we picture ourselves as a child, we go to like usually one period in time instantly. And so she said, grab that picture and put it on your bathroom mirror. And every day when you get up, you go into the bathroom and you look at that little girl and you give her affirmations. You tell her you love her. You have a conversation with her like you are being her parent and giving her everything that you never got. And in that, with that and affirmations, I've learned to communicate with my little Dawn at such another level that she is so much a part of me, and she just never feels like, not never, right? I shouldn't say use the word never, but for the most of the time she feels pretty dang safe. And I think that's a really important one that we did not mention.
Yeah, that is a huge one. It was a big deal for me to teach that inner self, that inner child, that it's okay to feel whatever I feel. It's okay
Hmm.
to think whatever I think. It's not bad. It's not wrong. It's not anything. It just is what it is. And to be able to give myself back the power that was never given to me as a child.
Right.
Hmm. Well, like speaking kindly and gently to myself, it has someone said a safer space. It is a safer space inside of me now. Since I speak to myself with with an open mind and like a sense of humor and gently and kindly.
All right. So this was intentional communication with self. Some great conversation, great suggestions on how to do that, how to start it, how to continue to grow it. Um, Ashley, Mel, thank you very much for this conversation tonight. Listeners, thank you for joining us. We love having you here. And next week, we're going to be taking the flip side of this, right? We talked tonight about communicating with ourselves. Next week, next podcast, we're going to talk about listening to ourselves. And it's a whole different beast.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, Dawn. Thank you, Mel. Thank you, listeners. Another great week, another great topic.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
We would like to thank you for joining us on this journey of self-discovery. Visit the Work It website at workityouareworthit.com to submit your questions and topics for future episodes. And remember, work it because you are worth it.